الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما علمتنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم اشف مرضى المسلمين. اللهم فرج الكرب عن المسلمين في غزة وفي فلسطين وفي لبنان وفي الشام وفي كل مكان يا رب العالمين. وصل على محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. As a reminder to keep our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world and in the United States in your dua, and if there's anything that you can do to help financially or voluntarily within your means, please do not hesitate to do so, and remind yourselves and myself to be able to contribute in that way. Okay, so what we covered up till now is almost all of the basis that we need to understand Islamic transactions, financial transactions. And there really, and as I mentioned a few times, there really is not a differentiator of Islamic finance, right? It's just really telling you a handful of rules they have to avoid in the marketplace. Other than that, all of our finance, they're non-Muslim finance, it's all the same finance. It's all the same. Again, we just have a certain amount of rules, maybe less than a dozen or so, to be able to make sure that it's a fair and just system being implemented on both sides, on both parties in these transactions. So we covered partnerships, we covered musharaka, which is partnership contracts, we covered mudaraba, which is another form of a partnership contract, and we mentioned their differences on who owns, who has ownership, who has liability in terms of losses, how you split losses, how you can cap one's earnings and profit. That's agreeable, if that's agreed upon. How you can split profit depending on the labor or the skill being put in the management of the company versus a silent investor. We went over those differences and who makes management decisions. The next type of contract we're going to go over are loan types of contracts. And this is a very important narration. Everyone should know it by now. It's a hadith, it's authentically reported by Ali ibn Abi Talib, athar to him and also to other companions, that every loan in which brings some kind of benefit is riba. Every loan that brings some kind of benefit to the lender is riba. That is your underlying rule. That is your underlying starting point in terms of loans, and that falls under qard hasana. And so we mentioned this multiple times. The Prophet ﷺ said, mentioned in a narration about prohibiting any type of conditions placed on a loan that will give the person money back or an implied gift to me after you give it back, etc. Also, the scholars mention what about if someone loaned you something, right? If someone loaned something to you, so let's say me, I loaned something to Ridwan and some money, so he owes me $1,000. But Ridwan all of a sudden wants to give me a gift. He says, hey, I saw this nice deal on Amazon and I wanted to give you a gift. Well, because we have an open loan between us, the scholars differentiated. If it was mine and Ridwan's habit to exchange gifts regularly prior to the loan happening, then there's no problem in that. It's still questionable. So be careful about it, right? If that we didn't have a habit of exchanging gifts before the loan contract occurred between us, then this would be not allowed. You get it? So I want to go a step further to mention that if you have an active loan between someone, you're not even allowed to give them a gift in that regard. Okay, so a qard hasana is an exchange of a property for a liability of the same amount on the borrowing party, where only the borrower benefits. Right? So it means that you're taking or you're giving a loan not to expect anything in return, not any services, not any gifts, not any increase in money, but you are expecting hasana. You understand that point? Hasana. You're expecting good deeds from Allah for assisting somebody in a time of need. Assisting someone in a time of need. That's the expectation. You're expecting a reward from Allah alone. So when you borrow something, you must return it back exactly like it was, such how you borrowed it. The scholars differentiated between what? Qimiyat and mithliyat. Qimiyat and mithliyat. We're going to mention these two examples. So if you borrowed a gold bracelet that was 20 grams in weight, and you said, I want it paid back in 2 years, they need to give you back 20 grams of gold. They need to give you that back. And so there's a key point for you. Some people are saying that, well, why isn't it, so some scholars, or I wouldn't call them even scholars, some researchers, let's call it that, they believe, and you may have heard this, it's okay to issue or take a loan as long as the interest rate is equal to or less than inflation. You heard of that before? Did anybody hear that? I heard some people giving me this statement before. Well, first of all, that's pie in the sky. There's no shari'i thing about that basis to allow such a thing. That's number one. That's valuing the time over money principle. Like we mentioned, we don't do that in Islam. But there is a way that a person can not lose in the transaction and get back what they wanted. So for example, if you were going to loan someone $100,000, right? I would say if you're somebody who wants to just make sure that they return you your money back equal to what its value is, let's say the gram today is $90, I think, if you're buying $90 in gold. So if you did, let's make it easy. Let's say it was 100. So I'll give them 1,000 grams of gold. I'll loan you 1,000 grams of gold. What do you owe me back? 1,000 grams of gold. You see it? Now, I can be on the short end of the stick there. I could be, because I'm loaning it at a very high time. It's 90. Let's say the economy fluctuates, it gets better, and then it cuts in half. Guess what Mr. Borrower did? He pays me back 1,000 grams of gold. But if I wanted to sell that gold on the marketplace, I might get only 50,000 later on. So don't think, because somebody said, oh, I'm only going to loan, if anybody needs money to borrow from me, I'm only going to loan it in gold going forward. Okay? That may be an idea for you, but number one, you shouldn't do it with the intention of making money on the loan. You understood that part. But Islamically and Shar'an, that is absolutely fair that you loan somebody 1,000 grams of gold, you get back 1,000 grams of gold. And that's why, just so you know, real wealth is measured in terms of finite things, not things that you really can't measure. So gold is a way to measure wealth. So just keep that in mind. You have to be able to recognize the payment back. Recognize the payment back. Likewise, if you borrowed 20 grams of rice from me, or 20 pounds of rice, I owe you back, you owe me back 20 pounds of rice. So, can you pay back more than you initially borrowed? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. The Prophet ﷺ, he borrowed for money for the public interests. What did he borrow? He borrowed an ibil. He took a loan out as an ibil, which is a camel. And so when it came time to repay the camel back to the one that the Prophet ﷺ borrowed on behalf of the state of public interests, they couldn't find a camel similar to the one that the Prophet ﷺ borrowed. So he said, give them back one of the bigger ones, the better camels. And the Rasul ﷺ said that the best people amongst us are the ones who pay back their debts handsomely. So it's a gift, an unexpected gift. Do you understand that? And an unexpected way of saying, you know what, you helped me out so much in a time of need. I needed a house. I couldn't afford it. You helped me out. You were there for me. You know what? I want to give you this gift as a car, as my appreciation. Or here's 10 grand, or here's 50 grand. And the owner says, no, I don't need that. I just wanted to help you out. I want my reward only from Allah. I know that, but I just want to give you this reward as a gift. But we mentioned it can't be one of those wink, wink things, like, oh, I'm going to give you this loan, this $200,000 loan for this house. But I always wanted a Corvette. I'm just saying, since we're just getting to know one another, those car chargers, the new one that comes out, that level 2 car charger, that thing looks so cool, man. You know what I mean? You keep doing on one of those. It says, yeah, I know what you mean. Take the loan, just give me the money, None of this stuff. We don't have loopholes in our religion. We don't have loopholes in our religion. And also, just so you know, on a side note, it is also a sunnah to pay a shopkeeper more than they're asking for. I know we're in the habit of haggling and negotiating and getting it to the lowest price, but fairly speaking, a Muslim should be somebody who gives somebody of their fair price and even gives more than they're even being asked for. That is a sunnah. But it's almost like unheard of, especially if you go to a lot of these Asian countries. They actually think it's an insult if you're not even negotiating with them. And that's a cultural thing, by the way. So some people do that. But my point is, again, is that we as Muslims, if you're noticing, it's Allah teaching you to eliminate greed and miserliness from your life, right? This shopkeeper's working hard. They have expenses, they have a lease payment, they have employees, they have all of this, and you're over here trying to get the bananas for like 6 cents more off. Just buy the bananas, man. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, I don't see anybody texting customer service at Amazon, and they're like, hey, this thing that's $19.99, you could do it for $18.99. Come on. Nobody does that. But we only do it with ourselves or shopkeepers. Right? And that's a habit you have to learn how to get out of. So you're noticing that Allah is teaching you not to tie your spirituality with wealth and money. Don't tie it down. And when you do that, you become, you have this burden lifted from yourselves. Okay? Can you borrow usufruct? What does that mean? Let's say I own a rental property, and you own a rental property. Can I say, hey, I'll let you borrow my property for 1 week, and you let me borrow your property for 1 week? Can we do that? Well, some scholars said no. They said because they might not be equal. They said your apartment might be a 3-bedroom and a view on the ocean. His or her apartment might be in the city and on the 2nd floor or 3rd floor. They might not be equal. The shorter answer is you can. You're allowed to. Because it's the agreement that you come about, an apartment for apartment, it's generally speaking, and you're allowed to borrow that and repay it likewise. Because I'm borrowing 1 week of your time, I'm repaying it to you with 1 week in my time. And again, it's as long as there's mutual acceptance and understanding. Because when you're agreeing to it, you also want to be fair, right? Like, mine is a 2-bedroom, yours is a 3-bedroom, but mine is overlooking Central Park. Yours is on, a beachfront on the Jersey Shore. But they might be valued pretty equal. So if you recognize that, you can make that type of deal. You can make that type of exchange. Are you allowed to ask for your money back sooner than what we agreed upon? So let's say I say, hey Muhammad, here's $200,000 to borrow for your house. I want it back in 5 years. Some of the scholars mention that you must stick to the time you agreed upon because of the ayah in Ayat al-Dain in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah mentions that, where if you who believe, if you loaned anything for an agreed upon time, write it down. So Allah is saying for an agreed upon time, you agreed on something, you should fulfill it, right? Because the mu'minun fulfill their conditions. Other scholars said it's your money and you have the right to ask for it back whenever you want. You might be in a pinch and you need it now. so much more than they needed it, right? So it's a difference of opinion, but for me, I side with the scholars who say that you should stick to the timeline that you agreed on, because that's what you agreed to, okay? Going to the, so that takes care of loans. We're going to go to the next group of contracts, which is hiba, which is gifts. Very simple, and also awqaf are very simple as well. Gifts is a contract. Hiba, it's called a hiba or a gift, is a contract in which one results a voluntary transfer of ownership of an item or wealth without receipt of a counter value by the donor. It's therefore a unilateral contract. It is a unilateral promissory contract. Okay? And the Rasul ﷺ mentioned the one who takes back his gift is like the dog who vomits and licks it back off the ground. So when you give somebody a gift, you should never take it back. You should never take it back. And just so you know, that also, well, I don't want to open that topic. Never mind. I was going to talk about marriages at the time of engagement periods and gifts taking back, and that's a whole topic, and it's not the time for it. Okay, so anyhow, but that is a authentic narration. Now, as far as awqaf goes, these are endowments and trusts. Endowments and trusts. All of the companions, all of them that you're aware of, have had an endowment or a trust in their name. What is an endowment and a trust or a trust? It is a voluntary, irrevocable dedication of one's wealth or a portion of their wealth in cash or kind or a value like a garden or a house, etc. And its disbursement for a Sharia compliant principle, such as a masjid, such as a relief organization, such as maybe a local food bank, whatever, Islamically permissible. And again, once you make a dedication that this is a waqf, you are not to take it back. So, like you still know that the waqf that Uthman did, you could see them in Medina all around. They still say this is the waqf of Uthman ibn Affan, and there's a few others as well. But my point for the well, and you look at that, but what I'm trying to tell you is that we as Muslims should be thinking about that. So if you open up a business or a second business or a rental income, you don't have to make it so hard on yourself. You could say, you know what, 5% of this rental income is a waqf. I'm dedicating it as a waqf as long as I'm alive, so that you do not have to entangle your inheritors with figuring out how much of that 5% does it go. So as long as I'm alive, or you could say, you know what, no, I am going to give away, while I'm alive, 5% of the rental income from this property as a waqf to an Islamic organization so-and-so. And also in my will, upon my death, we will sell this rental property, and 5% of that rental property will go to this organization also, its value. You're allowed to do that also, right? So this is something to think about. We should all have a waqf as a reminder to try to set that up. And you can do it legally. Legally, it would be through an attorney, and it would be called a trust, okay? And you're going to notice this very importantly when you do these trusts with your children. When we cover UTMAs and so forth, that's called like a minor's trust account. So that's just very important. So when you dedicate that, or when you give that gift to one of them, you have to be fair if you're giving gifts according to your children, just so you know. On a side note, I did forget to mention that. Going to the second category on hiba and gifts, if you're giving gifts to your children, it has to be equal, whether it's a boy or a girl. Equal boy or a girl. Inheritance laws are different than giving gifts. One of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I would like you to be one of the witnesses that I gave this garden to my child, he said, to my son, he said, have you given all of your other children a similar garden? He said, no. He said, then I will not witness against oppression. This is not allowed. I'll not be a witness against that, with that. So if you have a boy and a girl, and you gave one of them a $50,000 gift to pay for college, you should figure out how to give the other one a $50,000 gift. And that's why you should be smart when you're giving the first gift, because then you're in for it, folks, right? And that's how Allah Azza wa Jal allows for no animosity to be harvested amongst any of the siblings, Because I noticed this a lot, especially with sons, they'll buy their son a house. I know the sisters, I know. But when you know that it's not allowed, they will stop this and they will fix it, inshallah. So keep this in mind. If you bought your son a house, you need to buy your daughter a house. He says, oh, but she's living with her husband, they're well off, it doesn't matter. All right, well, give her cash. She'll never say no to $500,000. Right? And they're all just like, bring it to us, brother. Yani, alhamdulillah. So be wise about how you're giving gifts. Be wise about how you're giving gifts. Okay. The next are contracts of security, which is essentially different forms of insurance. I'll translate them from the screen. And rahin is collateral. Rahin is collateral. You ever see those pawn shops that you see, right, on True TV, or I don't know if people have cable anymore. Maybe I'm old. I mean, what shows come on Netflix like that? Is it the same show, right? Isn't it? Pawn shops, right? Or right? Pawn shops, stars, something like this, whatever. So the point is, those are vicious criminals, in my opinion. Okay, they will give you a loan based on how much you want. You will put your item of value. They'll only give it to you knowing that the item that you put as collateral is worth more than the loan, right? Because that's what they're taking. So you say, hey, listen, I really need to borrow $1,000. I'll pawn this. I'll give it as collateral. They'll say, okay, no problem. They look at the value of what you're going to pawn or give as collateral. It's a Rolex that's worth $7,000. They're like, okay, we'll take the Rolex. And they're banking on you not paying it back. Not only are they banking on you not paying it back, you're also signing an insane interest rate on the $1,000, hoping that you can't pay the $1,000 plus the interest back. Islamically, you're allowed to do the following. You can take an item so that they can borrow $1,000 and you can hold the Rolex as collateral, as rahin. Here's the important part. What they owe you back, we mentioned already, is only the $1,000. Then you give the Rolex back. But then they come back and says, listen, I don't have it. Just things went sour. I don't got the $1,000. You have collateral. Islamically, you must do the following. You must sell the item. You must sell the item. After the item is sold, you are only allowed the $1,000. The balance must be given back to the original owner. Must be given back to the original owner. So if the Rolex sold for $7,000, I got my $1,000 back. Here's your $6,000. I'm done. So Islamically, you should be wise that what you're going to hold as collateral should be slightly more or equal to what you're loaning. Because if I come back and I sell the Rolex and it turned out to be a fake, and I wind up selling it for $500, well, I loaned Muhammad $1,000, I only have $500 settled. Muhammad still owes me $500. He still owes me, and it stays as a debt to him. So keep that in mind. So if you're loaning and you're holding something as collateral, which is a good idea, right? I tell people that it should be equal value or higher and verify it to be able to, cover yourself, essentially, if somebody were to default, okay? All right. And typically, a lot of scholars mention that when Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah about rahin, Allah was referring to where there's no witnesses around, where there isn't witnesses who can document that you loaned something. You can hold an item to be able to get that back. Because another form of a kafil, who's somebody who's a witness, a kafil is a person whose responsibility will be to bring that person to court, that they will show up to court in the case of a dispute. That is a kafil, that they make sure they show up to court. Not that they take the money, the debt on their behalf, but that's what the next part is, the kafala. So that's a guarantor, okay? And so that a kafala in terms of a court system, there's different types. There's in contracts in a court system, I could be a kafil if Muhammad's like, oh, I really need this money. He says, yeah, but I don't know if you're ever going to pay me back. And if I ever take you to court, you'll never show up. And I'm just going to be screwed. Somebody will say, listen, I know him, he's my cousin, I'll be his kafil. Meaning what? He's going to make sure Muhammad shows up in court if there is an issue. That doesn't mean that his cousin's responsible for it. He just makes sure he's going to drag his behind out of bed, make sure he shows up in court for his, for the hearing. Okay, kafala in terms of a contract itself is like co-signing, like I just mentioned. So it's like co-signing the loan. That will make you financially, subjected to the amount if you're co-signing. But if you're signing up as I don't think there's actually an English translation for a kafil. We don't have that in American law, right? Like, I'll just make sure he shows up to court. Like, well, who are you? Well, I'm his brother. Well, what if he doesn't come? Like, what? I don't know. I don't think we have something like that. A bond? Like you bond me to him? I don't think there is this concept in American law. Huh? I know there's a bond, like that's like a jail thing though. That's like he went to jail. I mean, you caught him already. I mean, I don't need a...
Well, they'll let you go, I pay a bail, and the bail I pay guarantees they show up in court. If you don't show up in court, I lose my bail money.
Is that how that works? I never actually looked at how bail, is that how that works?
Yeah, but I have to put up money for it.
Oh, okay, so almost like a bail system maybe. But yeah, I don't think, so there you go, maybe that's the closest. Now you're gonna make me look into that. Now I have to see. Okay, good, so I like when I can add to my notes. See, a lot of people don't realize this. The more that you teach the subject over and over, you wind up adding and learning as well. Okay, so another form of kafala, other than co-signing, other than being a kafil, a guarantor for someone's appearance in court, is warranties. Warranties. And that is, for example, if you purchased a Samsung dishwasher or microwave, I don't know, and it says, listen, you can get the 5-year plan for the warranty for $19.99 a year, and if you pay for 5 years up front, it's $80. Save 1 year free. Now, for a warranty to be Sharia compliant, it must be offered by the manufacturer themselves or the seller themselves. I want to make that crystal clear. Otherwise, it is a contract of gharar. You're essentially betting on the likelihood of something if there's a third party involved. So if I purchased my truck from Chevy and they said, hey, do you want the extended warranty? As long as it's from Chevy directly, it is halal. If I buy a used car and it's a Chevy and the used car dealer says, hey, do you want the extended warranty? You got to read the terms and conditions in the fine print. Typically, it's XYZ insurance agency gives you the assurances of a 3-year warranty against, dents, engine failure, and all this. This third party is not allowed. Islamically is not allowed. And most of it's gimmicks, by the way. Most of it is a lie anyway. They're all ripping you off because if you read, there's so many conditions that they'll wind up not fulfilling their contract, their end of the deal. Okay, so if it is a third party, then it is not allowed. But if it is from the manufacturer, the seller themselves, or the service provider, it is fine. Such as what? Travel insurance. So I booked flight tickets with United, right? Now, pre-COVID, I could sit there and get $30 for a trip and United will cover me for sicknesses or urgent cancellations, etc. Today, if you read the travel coverage, it's United. It's by like Allstate or something. So as long as it's from the service provider, then it's fine. If it's not from the service provider, then it's not allowed. So I'll show you a difference here. I personally like to book my travel with airlines directly. However, like for example, you go to other, who is it, like Price Match or whatever they call, what, Priceline or something. Who? Yeah, there's so many, right? Yeah. So if that sales agency themselves is offering you the travel insurance from themselves, then it would be allowed. It would be allowed. But it got to be from the one you're purchasing, right? So like if you're purchasing a massive flat screen TV from Best Buy, if Best Buy is offering you the warranty from Best Buy, it's allowed, even though the TV's Samsung. Why? Because Best Buy is the salesperson. The salesperson directly is giving me the warranty. They're guaranteeing their sales, the products they're holding in their store. If he says, listen, Samsung's going to give you the extended warranty, it's also allowed because Samsung is the manufacturer. Well, the problem is when you go to like Home Depot and you say, hey, oh, do you want the 5-year warranty on this Milwaukee drill? He says, oh, this sounds awesome. Yeah, let me sign up. And then you scroll down, and it's like, oh, next insurance company will warranty you XYZ. Red flag. Home Depot's not offering it, and Milwaukee's not offering it. However, though, Home Depot offers a protection plan that they say, but you have to check scroll down to make sure it's Home Depot that's giving you the protection plan. Where they'll say, hey, if this drill fails within 3 years, you don't even need a receipt. We come pull your account, your pro account online, you return the drill, we'll swap it for you. Again, as long as Home Depot is offering it to you, this will be allowed. But the last time I checked, and this is some time ago, it is not Home Depot who's offering that plan to you. So I just want to, the key thing, now you're the wiser. Now you're smarter. Now you know what to look for. You don't have to sit there and send these questions in every time. I was offered this, I was offered that. You know what to look for now. Says, okay, let me see, we're more aware transactional people now. Okay? So that comes in terms of kafala. Kafala. So it comes in different forms in financial transactions. And the last two we're going to cover, or three, is shuf'a. I put on here, yes. Shuf'a, and we mentioned this is not really too much to it, but it is one of the security contracts. And it is the law of preemption. The law of preemption. That neighbors have the first right to buy land that is attached to their land, only unmovable items this can be applied to. Unmovable items. So some scholars said a mobile home wouldn't be applied there. He says, no, that's mine, I want to buy it. He says, what do you mean it's yours? He just drove away to Texas. That's the house I was hoping for my sister. Well, that's too bad. You know, so it has to be unmovable items. So the neighbors have first right to buy the land. It is enough that the neighbor posts a sign, and allows you to bid on it equally with other buyers, right? So you could come back and say, hey, listen, I put a for sale sign up. You knew it was for sale. He says, no, but I was on vacation. I was overseas, my home country for 3 weeks, and you sold it while I was gone. If this was an Islamic court, if this was an Islamic country, you can actually take this individual to court, and then you will be offered the opportunity to buy it at the rate that the person it was sold to. And you can nullify that deal. You can nullify that deal because you'll have that right to it. Okay? And that also, I tell people all the time, this is how us as Muslims should, just from this one rule, should understand how to apply it to our daily lives. Our masajid, we learned it, alhamdulillah, here and in other communities. You keep purchasing land that's connected to you. That's how you'll grow the community. I see a lot of masajid they own a masjid here on Roselle Avenue, and then they'll go buy land on Central Avenue. Why? Like, where's the geniusness there? Like, who thought of that? Well, all of our board are surrounded with 6 medical doctors. That's awesome. None of them understand business. So what are we supposed to do? Park there and then bus here? You see, when you understand how Islam works, it gives you the perfect solution for everything. So this masjid will eventually be this entire block, inshallah. We might not see it, but can you imagine that we die and then we were shown a glimpse of the future, 500 or 1,000 years, Allahu Alam, how long Earth has left, and we see this entire 2 or 3, 4 blocks is all the masjid of NIA, and then you got the community center here, parking from here to the end of the street. It's a dream come true. Or we could just park at Prudential and take our electric scooters all the way here. You see, then it doesn't make sense anymore. And yet this one rule shows you how to expand. Also your lives. When you own a house, it's smart if you want to expand, buy the house next to you or behind you, etc. Right? Even as an investor, that is smarter for you to be able to manage your investment properties right in front of you. You're not installing, freakishly weird and creepy Ring cameras as like, oh, 6 people entered today. I rented it to 4. Something's going on over there. Like one of those, freaks. This is not how the world works. But, when you're in the neighborhood, you care about the property around you. You're surrounding everybody, and then you're welcoming people, and you're not just renting to anyone. You don't become a slumlord. Because if you're renting the property next door, you care to make sure the landscaping's nice, the people you're renting to are nice. You keep the neighborhood good. One of the worst things that happen in a community is gentrification. What they do is they'll buy 6 houses, they'll knock them down and rent them to a bunch of hobos, right? You'll have go-go dancers sitting outside front. You'll have drug deals going right down over there, and the investor doesn't care. He's Sections 8, and I'm not knocking on Section 8, but this is what they think about. I'm just going to get my money from the government. That's what they care about, Section 8, not the people. They care about getting money, a perfect check from the government, and I don't care who lives there. They don't care about the neighborhood. They don't care about everybody being a community there. They're just like, whoever wants to live in there, live in it. Whoever's going to give me money, give me money. See how much of a disaster that is? But if you live next to that building, oh, you're going to think 10 times before who you rent it to, aren't you? Oh, yes, you are. And then the neighborhood stays good. The neighborhood stays safe. And you care to help the community grow. And you see somebody, Muhammad and Lena's son who just got married. He says, hey, listen, we're trying to start off. Listen, I got an open apartment here. I'll give you 10, 15% off the rent for the first year to get yourself started out. You know everybody around you. Everybody's helping one another. Just from one rule of shuf'a and studying it. Understanding that. Just one rule. And that shows you how to invest your money. I know a lot of people who are silly, sitting there, they bought desert land in Arizona. It actually lost value. This is all, maybe a highway is going to go through it one day. It's like, okay, great. And if it doesn't, now I'm not saying don't do that. But you've never even seen the land. You don't know what's on it. You don't know if it's cactus or wild Mustangs. You have no clue. But here is how you expand your wealth, and you should invest. Something to think about. Last but not least, is wakala. Oh, I think I missed one. And hawala. I didn't put that. Oh, hawala is not on here. Okay, let me cover wakala first. So, and then we'll end with tahweel. So, wakala comes in 2 formats. It means agency, or as they say, power of attorney, which you're aware of. Full and partial agency. I wrote a paper and a dissertation, and I do need to have it peer reviewed, but I could tell you this is a very important concept that I think is extremely overlooked, shar'an, in terms of home financing and how we could come up with a solution with our current companies that already exist. But let's go over what it is. Partial or full power of attorney. Complete power of attorney, you know what it is. They have the ability to enact and sign and engage in contracts on your behalf. Okay? Partial is where you might hire an agent, like a real estate agent, although they're not really a full partial, but nonetheless, you could say, hey, find me a house, this is the requirements, but I have final say on whether I signed that contract or not. So this is kind of like a partial power of attorney or an agency, if you will. The agent needs to work for the benefit of the person they're representing. That's very important. You need to work for the benefit of the person you're representing. And if it meets the criteria and you allow them to execute the contract, they're allowed to execute on your behalf. Such as what the Prophet ﷺ, he did. He gave 2 dirham to a man, a companion, to buy a goat for him in the marketplace. The man went to the marketplace and bought 2 goats. See, he's a good negotiator. He negotiated 2 goats, and then he sold one of the goats for 2 dirham. He was also a good salesman. So he sold them. He sold one of the goats for 2 dirham. He came back to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, here's the 2 dirham you gave me, and here's the goat. Got him a free goat. Just because why? Sold sales. Salespeople are very good. Also, some scholars mention this goes to show you that the marketplace can fluctuate. Why? Some of the scholars mentioned, who commented on this narration, that the going rate of the goat was actually 1 dirham that day. But the price fluctuated based on supply and demand, and he was able to sell the goat for 2 dirham after he sold one of them and he doubled his money. Why is that important? Some people say that if you're investing in the stock market and you're a day trader, there's too many fluctuations. Fluctuations don't really make something haram. We care about the process in the transaction. So if you're somebody who purchased, NVIDIA, 2 years ago, and it went up 3,000% or whatever that number was, it's like, oh my God, this is too much speculation. And no, stop, time out. I invested. I'm an investor and I bought shares, etc. It was a halal company. That's what I did my research on. I like the direction of the company, like what a lot of other companies are relying on for. That's why I bought it. But it tripled. Alhamdulillah, it tripled. And if it went down, were you going to blame me also? Or are you just happy when I lose? So a marketplace can fluctuate. It can even double, as it happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But the man was working as an agent on behalf of the Prophet. So as long as it meets the criteria, you can exercise and execute a better deal, right? So if I told my limited power of attorney real estate agent, because I also gave him the ability to execute a contract on my behalf, hey, I'm looking for an investment property, a 4-family house, a 4-family building, and it should be within zip code, whatever zip code is here, 07102, and I want it to, I give him a criteria for everything. And then he comes back and says, hey, I got you 2 4-unit buildings. What? That's not what I told you to do. Get rid of one of them. It's like, who does that, right? But you got 2 for the price of 1, 2 buildings. You're very happy. This is the best sale. You're affirmed. This person is great, etc. And you should also give them a nicer share of what you were planning to, because I also saw that happen, where this actually did happen, and they invested their money on their behalf if the market conditions met a certain thing. He made them $100,000. That's a lot of money. And that was fair. That was it was going to be 10%, right? And the realistic expectation was the person was going to make around 40,000. I get it. He's getting more, but I'm just saying it would be nice. You just pocketed $100,000. So you should also be generously speaking. Anyhow, okay. So now hawala is the last one that's not on here, and that is a transfer of debt. Tahweel. Hawala means it is a transfer of liability or debt from the original borrower to someone who will fulfill it on his or her behalf. So if you borrowed $1,000 from me, and then you no longer can pay it back to me, then over here, I don't know, Sister Sada owes you $1,000. So you're like, listen, I don't have the money to pay a baker back. Can you just give him the money? He says, okay. Tahweel. So we transferred the debt from Ahmed giving it to me. Now Sada owes me the $1,000. So it is a transfer of debt. It is a transfer of debt. In real estate terms, that is called an assumption or an assumable mortgage. Very rare to happen, but that is important to know because if that is another way that you can Islamically purchase a house through tahweel, through a transfer of debt, so that you're actually not initiating a loan from the bank, but you're transferring the debt of someone else to you. Now, granted, it is an impermissible debt versus a permissible debt. So you must pay it off as quickly as you possibly can. Because Islamically, we are not to be engaging in riba. Not to be engaging in riba. So that's very important. But tahweel is a different type of transfer of debt, which was settled through a third party. So that's very important to understand, that somebody else came in and says, listen, instead of him paying me, they will pay me. Also, there is another thing that I'll just mention, which is called ad-daman al-ijtima'i, which is kind of a collateral, a collective insurance, if you will, which is like Social Security. Social Security, we have that in Islam. And also certain types of medical coverages are also allowed when they make it like a group type of medical coverage and a membership. That's also important. Why? When we're covering insurance contracts, also on a side note, that is why some scholars said that credit unions will be more in line Islamically than a regular bank because you are a member. You are a member. That is important when we cover next week with the home loans and home mortgages, because when you're a member of an organization, there are many different rules that apply that wouldn't have applied otherwise in seeking a loan. So a credit union is slightly different, and I know there was an Islamic center in South Jersey that was trying to start a credit union, but it was going to only be initially for the members of the masjid, because it's not easy to be able to distribute that much money and collect it. Yes?
But credit union still have savings.
No. Yeah, so yes and no. That you jumped ahead a little bit. So a credit union, it depends, right? Because the credit union savings account on a traditional credit union, they're not really sharing any losses. They're only giving you guarantees. That's the problem. A Muslim one is you're supposed to share losses. You see, that's the key thing, because when you're putting your money in a well, we should call it a savings account, more like an investor type savings account, where hey, we're going to take your $20,000 in this account, but we're going to invest it in local businesses, etc. And we'll look at your pool and what your return is, and if it was 1%, 2%, etc. But if it lost, we're going to take 1% or 2%, etc. Nobody accepts that. That's the problem. You see, because it's like, okay, it's 20 grand, but it stays 20, unless you want to add more. Well, that's called riba. Like, you're not really investing there. So yeah, by default, I would still tell you to stay away from a savings account, unless it is a Muslim bank. Okay, that covered all of the basis that we need to cover next week. It will not be recorded. I will highly encourage anybody to bring your family members, because we are going to start covering for the next 2 weeks Islamic home buying. It's very important. So that would be able to give you all the details on halal ways and options we can purchase a house, which will be Islamically permissible, inshallah. Anybody have any questions what we covered today? I think I went over a little bit. I'm sorry about that, but I just needed to get